Welcome to the Design Build Institute of America's Design Build Delivers podcast. I'm Kim Wright at DBIA's national headquarters. Early engagement and collaboration are, of course, design build hallmarks. Research shows the more collaboration, the better the results. But what does that really mean for design build team members like manufacturers and suppliers? How well are project managers really engaging their supply chain on design build projects nationwide? Are we missing opportunities for innovation? These are just some of the questions addressed in new research underway by FMI and facilitated by DBIA's Wastewater Committee. In this episode, we talked to Victaulic Vice President and DBIA Committee member Ernie Maschner about the research and efforts to determine, are there kinks in design build's engagement of the supply chain? Ernie, tell me a little bit about your experiences, where you've come from. I know you've been practicing for a good long time, doing design build and all kinds of alternative delivery methods, and why you feel so strongly about the importance of engaging the supply chain so early.
Well, I've spent about the last 20 years almost exclusively in design build for the large names in design build, AECOM, CH2M, MWH. And recently have moved over into a supply chain role with Victaulic manufacturer. And I noticed during that transition that there were a lot of cases where I wanted to try to get more early engagement in particular projects. I knew that I had a lot to add from being on the practitioner side, from being on the project director side.
Right.
And the message wasn't getting out there. And then I thought, oh my, was this the same thing that I was doing to my supply chain when I was in the middle of a pursuit or when I was in the middle of going after a project? And I started to think of maybe we need to change the dialogue and the engagement of how supply chain is viewed in design build and alternative delivery.
Because there's a lot of power in having early engagement from people who really are experts in fill in the blank.
Right, exactly. I think what we're going to see here at National Conference is the survey that we distributed to the industry, and what the results were overwhelmingly were that most of the players in the design build process, the owners, the general contractors, even members of the supply chain, felt that it was beneficial to have more engagement, early engagement, pre-RFQ, RFQ, and the perception of engagement during the actual delivery process was less because there was so much more opportunity to get the innovation, to get the good ideas, to get them earlier on in the design build process. And maybe this can be an opportunity to start to change the way we do business, do design build better, and get better case studies and examples of early engagement.
I think I had seen a number somewhere where, products and services are a huge percentage of construction project costs. It only seems to make sense that you're going to get the best value if you pull those folks in early to talk about your approach.
Right. What we found was when we were preparing for the survey was that the perception was, not that I necessarily agree with it, was that the earlier you lock somebody into an agreement, then you're losing commercial value, you're losing best value, and maybe not even best price. And so I think that's incumbent upon the industry we've got this a bit of a struggle between opposing forces here we know that early engagement is good. We know that the earlier we can make key decisions in the design build process, the better off a project will be. But yet there's a perception that, well, maybe if we do that, we're not getting the best price. And I think that's something that we need to change. And it comes, one of the inherent parts of design build is trust, collaboration, all of these things that we do as best practices. And I think that's part of the discussion that needs to be had.
That mental shift impacts every member of the team and every step of the process. Right.
Of course, even early decisions, there's a lot of times when being on the project director side and running a project where we'll get into we'll get into procurement, we'll start to buy out our materials. As well, because we bought manufacturer X versus manufacturer Y, now we have to go back and we have to redesign some things. We need to redesign the piece of equipment. It's larger, it's a different configuration, and maybe we have to move walls. And if that piece of equipment had been selected earlier in the process, we wouldn't have to do this a redesign, and hopefully you catch it early enough that you don't have to do rework in the field to accommodate, because you saved a little bit of money in your buyout.
And you're talking about those building those relationships. I mean, if you're talking about a new project team and maybe the team members haven't worked together before, they don't know each other, I would think that would be an obstacle to overcome too. If you've got to go out and find that specialty tradesperson, you've got to build those relationships.
Right, and what we found in the survey is that the specialty subcontractors are brought in very, very early. But again, if you have a design build process that maybe is working towards a GMP to where all of the packages have to be bid out, then maybe that subcontract, there's a benefit because he's getting a little bit of early knowledge about the project, and maybe he does have an inside track when it does come to bid it. But in the end, he's still competing against a lot of other subcontractors. And again, maybe it's you haven't advanced your design enough to be able to reap all those benefits of the early involvement.
So that sounds like that's one barrier potentially to really fully getting the best bang for your buck in early engagement. Are there other barriers that maybe are preventing teams from engaging their supply chain folks earlier? Having been on both sides of that, you've been on both sides of that fence.
Some of it is when you get the estimating groups and the engineering groups together, they may have an idea of what they want to, of how they want to deliver the project, which is terrific. And again, I've been in parts of those discussions of, we need to get our concrete done early, or we need to, get our piping systems prefabricated, preassembled, brought to site, all of these decisions. And sometimes there's a tendency to maybe want to close in those discussions with a smaller group for fear of maybe your silver bullet for winning the project happens to get out into the marketplace. And I think that's probably one of the biggest barriers to engaging a wider group of people in these decisions.
I know your work on the DBIA Water Wastewater Committee was, inspired a lot of this work. I mean, this was this committee's idea that we really need to investigate what's going on, and thus the beginning for the research that you talked about. What was the impetus? I mean, there are lots of issues in the industry that we try to address on a regular basis. How did this rise to the top for particularly in the water wastewater sector? Why was this so important, do you think?
Well, when I made the move from AECOM to Victaulic, it was interesting. I met our local sales rep that was covering the area of the project that I was working on at the time up in British Columbia. And I introduced myself, and he says, "Oh, yeah. I've been in your job trailer 4 times and I've never been able to meet you once." I'm like, "Really? Wow. Why is that?" I said, "They told me you were doing other things, that you don't talk to vendors." And I'm like, wow.
Wow,
It was kind of a, slap upside the head of, now that it's the other side, I try to work on, how can we improve that communication. And there was a better idea out there that I wasn't willing to listen to because I thought that I had it all dialed in. So that was the first one. And then the second one was John Giacchino at the Water Wastewater Conference. And my first conference now being no longer a project director, but being, as part of a global leadership team for manufacturer. And he said, we need to get the entire supply chain involved in projects, earlier in projects. And I tapped him on the shoulder with John. I said, "John, is that exactly, are you serious about that?" He said, "Oh, absolutely." And I said, "I've got some ideas, and let's see how we can change this." And that's how the ball got rolling from there.
Engagement.
And then coincidentally, FMI was working on a similar initiative within their organization and had contacted DBIA saying, we want to investigate supply chain engagement in design build. And Lisa Washington called me up and said, "You'll never believe the conversation that I had with FMI.
It must be a good idea."
And so here we are. We put the 2 organizations together, and between the subcommittee and the Water Wastewater Committee, we put this survey together. I mean, really quick. I mean, it was 5 months from from the initial spark to having the initial results that we're having at the conference here this week.
So let's talk a little bit about that. What was the key goals for you folks as you worked with FMI, and what are the things that you really wanted to get out of this research? And we'll talk about whether we got there.
Right. The goals were, one, with any type of a survey like this, is what are we currently doing now? What's the current state of play? Is the supply chain engaged? Are subcontractors engaged? Are manufactured equipment engaged? Are engineered materials, are they engaged? Vendors, everything down to the concrete supplier. What are we currently doing? And then the next follow-on was, well, this is what we're doing now. What should it look like? And that's how the results pretty much came out of what do we need to do. And then the follow-on, which I'm excited to go from the conference, is what are some of the good case studies? What have people done in this arena? I mean, both good and bad. We, obviously, we want to be able to share what's gone well and what hasn't quite gone as desired. Of seeing how has this benefited projects.
We can't fix it if we haven't defined it.
That's right.
Yeah. How was the response? Was this something that the industry seemed engaged, that they were interested in? I mean, did we hear from the folks we wanted to hear from?
Yes, we got a good wide range from owners, primary contractors, subcontractors, vendors, engineered systems. We got a good cross section, nearly 200 results in initial survey through DBIA's membership, and very, very good feedback.
Any surprises in this first set of responses?
Not really. It's one of those you try when you do something like this to not jump to the end and not try to skew the results. And we worded our questions. We really wanted to get some open, free flow answers, and we got some good commentary as well. I think generally most of the industry felt that earlier engagement by a wider range of the supply chain was a good thing, and that was where they were pointing us towards. So then I think the follow-on for our group, the DBIA FMI group, the Water Wastewater Committee, and the Supply Chain Subcommittee, would be then to look at what are the best practices, what do they look like? Mm-hmm. What can we say? This is the best way to proceed with an equipment manufacturer. This is the best way to proceed with a vendor, and there's probably going to be different answers for each mm-hmm. one of those levels of the supply chain. But I think we'll be able to put together some good information and distribute it to industry.
How are our teams succeeding or not succeeding in actually early engagement? Are they engaging early, or is it just something that's still aspirational?
We're openly soliciting good case studies and examples of where it's happened, and hopefully we can put those together into a good summary of the survey results and help to educate our industry, which is what our ultimate goal is to make us all better.
So thinking about your decades of experience, again, we talked about on both sides, is there any case that stands out for you of an example of where it just worked? You know for a fact you saw that early engagement made a difference on a project for you as a project manager, let's say first.
Most of my career has been on water wastewater treatment, and I think we achieved a lot of benefits in partnering with engineered systems. It helped us in a lot of different ways. It helped our process engineers determine what the best way of solving the owner's problem was, and then it enabled us to lock down design earlier. What I mentioned earlier about if you know the size of the thing that you're designing to, it helps you to optimize things. And I'll admit earlier on I haven't quite gotten as deep in the supply chain that now we're advocating, but I think that there's ways of being able to do it.
I would think too that early engagement of supply chain would be such a natural fit for design build, since it's all about integration.
Right, it is. And where the survey showed that there was reluctance, it was getting too many people locked down too early, getting too a lot of voices are, diverse voices are good, Sometimes if you're in a time crunch, if your procurement period in maybe a fixed price design build is relatively short, sometimes the lead design builder has to limit the amount of interaction that they have and wait until they actually move into a design phase. Whereas in a progressive design build or a two-step, maybe there's a bit more time during that engineering definition period to get a few more voices involved.
If you were trying to give the elevator pitch to someone about how important, early supply engagement is.
Well, on that question, it's a bit, everybody's elevator pitch is different. So a concrete subcontractor's elevator pitch is going to be different than mine as an engineered piping systems provider. But I think in a lot of people's messages are going to be the same. We can add value early on. We can eliminate some of the risks that are involved in delivering the project, and we can mitigate those risks earlier on in the process, because design build it's built on risk management, and the sooner that a risk can be mitigated, given away, sold to somebody else better able to manage it, then that helps the whole project move forward, and ultimately it increases the certainty of delivery to the owner.
So this is really the first phase, because we'll talk about the first round of answers and survey information in phase one, but what comes next?
Right, so this survey is the dissemination of the raw data that we obtained. The next phase is to get more anecdotal information. What are some of the case studies from the practitioners and from the owners, and dig a little bit deeper into the topic. And then at the Water Wastewater Conference in April, we'll be providing a more comprehensive results of this entire engagement, both the survey data, just the pure yes, no, when do you want to be involved, versus this project, here's what we did and here's how it worked. This project, here's what we did, here's what didn't work. And that would be a more comprehensive results at that time. And then after that, we would be publishing best practices and the data through FMI. They're a world leader in doing this sort of research, distributing that then to industry and hopefully improving delivery of all projects.
So excellent, exciting things to come. Look forward to, we'll see more at the spring conference.
Yes, it's been very cool.
Thank you, Ernie, appreciate it.
Great, thanks.
FMI will present its research findings at the Design Build for Water Wastewater Conference in Dallas, running April 20th through 22nd. A transportation conference follows from the 22nd to the 24th. It's shaping up to be a terrific event with design build focused trends, topics, and networking just for the water and transportation sectors. See our program and more at dbia.org/conferences.